So, do we have any questions from the audience? Anybody going to be brave enough to raise a hand? I think you just got... Andrew, do you want to... let the other gentleman... Okay.
So, Troy Norcross with SCR team. So, access to all the data is great, but what about real-time access? I mean, immediate real-time access for like marketing and for advertising.
So you talk about marketing and advertising. Actually, you don't need real-time access for marketing and advertising. You need real-time access to the profile, right? But building the profile can be done in the background. But if you want real-time access to positional data and stuff like that, as it happens, our platform can provide that, if the user says yes, right? So you can have it, but you need to be careful in saying what you really need. You need real-time access to the profile, not to all my data.
The microphone's headed your way.
I was going to say the same thing in terms of the use case and whether or not the focus that we put on is the value of the data coming from the individual is it's accurate in real time, so it can be in the moment, but there are two other parameters that make it incredibly valuable. Often context can also be shared or containerized, and intent. And so the idea that real time, I'm searching for a fishing rod, I'm never ever going to go fishing, and that's for my brother-in-law is very different. So there is some nuance that real time can increase over big data. And again, it depends on the transparency and the trust that's in place and the permissions that are enabled. But real time, in just the way that Julian said, is also possible. Yeah. I mean, the whole point of the API of me or a digital version of ourselves is that it is living and it's bidirectional in the same way that data and information is designed to flow.
Benjamin, did you want to have the last word on this?
Obviously, on real time, no, because everything what was interesting to say has been said. Okay. So real time is quite easy to provide on the point where it's important. Maybe one thing which is more important to figure out is how you can make big data, and this is linked to real time, in a decentralized ecosystem of data. Because today data are centralized, so making big data is easy for big corporations. But when you are in an ecosystem where everybody has his own data locally, it's not that easy to organize the big data. And we are working with Orange and INRIA in France. We have 2 PhD working on what we call the big data in peer-to-peer, which makes it easy to distribute the computation through all the nodes. And it's the real time is not possible because when you have dozens of hundreds of nodes, it will be too long. But what is important is not the computation, is that the result of the computation can then be quickly accessed. So that's more or less what I could add.
Well, first, we do have time for one more. Excellent. Right then, Andrew.
So my question is really about is why now? People have been trying to make personal data services, personal data ecosystem businesses work for about 5 years, and their cuffs are looking a little bit frayed now. The sense is that something is really beginning to happen. Why now? Why 2016, 2017? Why not 2014?
Well, the good news is that all three of us have been doing this since at least 2009, if not before. So we are in the best place to say why now. People weren't looking, number one, all right? There has to be a certain level of visibility from the marketplace. That's number one. Number two, actually, even though we've had an app in the market since 2009, technologically it has taken some time for the ability to do it, right? But with all discontinuities, and we're facing a discontinuity from centralized to decentralized with the data, there is always a transition point. And it's sometimes hard to work out what's causing that until 2 years later when you look back and you see it. What I can tell you is it is happening now, and we've seen it. So when I looked 2 years ago, I was not struggling, but it would be about 60% of people would understand what we're saying. Now I'd like to think 100% of people get it. Now only a few companies are actually in the field doing it, but that's rapidly climbing. So there's a piece about the visibility of privacy and data. There's the piece about people recognizing we should be able to do more with data and trying to work out how. There's the piece about technology, and then there's a piece about it just has all come together.
In our analysis, we have 4 points. The first is a bit like Julian, is the market Uberization, the fact that big companies today are threatened by the new digital actors is a key point. Digital transformation is very important. In all companies, they all created the chief digital officer job in their companies in the COMEX at the COMEX level. So they are all focused on finding new paradigms because they fear the future. The businesses we are all of us doing were impossible a few years ago with those actors, just impossible. The second point is technology and the price of technology. When in the early 2000s, going into Gmail was obvious. You don't have to update, to backup, it's ubiquitous, but you need a server. And in 2000, a server was very expensive and you needed some skills. So you needed to mutualize the architecture and the skills. Today, this is a $15 box, and the software is very powerful. At the beginning of the cloud, you needed a centralized architecture. It's no longer the case, and it's an opportunity for people who show the difference. The whole ecosystem is doing as if the constraints were still here, whereas it's no longer the case. I like to say that in the early 80s, mainframes became personal computers, and nobody believed it. IBM sold the MS-DOS license to Bill Gates because they didn't believe in PC, in personal computers. And we have seen what happened. And everything is showing that this transition from cloud to personal cloud will happen, whatever the actor, Cozy or anyone else, but it will happen. And the two other, and I will be much quicker on the two other factors, is the abundance of data. The abundance of data, the numbers of silos in which your digital life is divided creates a lot of friction. So it makes a big opportunity for paradigms which lowers the frictions, and it's the case for the three of us. And the fourth is early adopters. To develop a new paradigm, you need early adopters. And all the digital paradigms started with early adopters. I like to quote Apple in 1977. They launched the Apple I, which was a kit. You had to take your screwdriver to have an Apple. So it's very far from the company we know today, and it's because there were some geeks who believed in this paradigm that the paradigm took off, and it's exactly the same today. Early adopters are really eager to find some solutions to have more digital autonomy. Technology, Uberization, early adopters, and the amount of data which is creating friction. These are our 4 points.
Yeah, I think just to build on that, to be brief, I think it's just convergence. It's the time that, whether or not you look at over a course of a decade, moving from that picture in New York of all a sea of horses and one car, and you take a photograph a decade later and you're struggling to see a horse and the streets are full of cars, and timing is part of it. Many of us in this room have had these concepts or ideas or tried different iterations of this over the last X number of years. I remember the first time I pitched the precursor to Miko, I was in a room full of people and they just said, you've completely lost your mind. The cost of cloud computing, no one's ever going to do things on your phone. You're just crazy. Like, this is just never going to happen. And I remember saying, we'll see legislation in parts of the world that will enable these things. And I think it's the confluence of things, and it comes down to we have a regulatory or a policy framework environment that's pushing it. We have the friction and the move to a digital world where people actually want things to work more effectively, and we need to unlock value. We have the capability with the technology, as Julian and Benjamin are saying. And then the other thing is that we are living in a different time. We're in a different epoch. If we think of our children or our grandchildren, the ability to pick up a device and feel very comfortable in the way that that's an extension of the self is the time that we find ourselves in. So I think it's actually the convergence of all of those things, and also maybe keeping the faith. It's a combination of all of those things.
Well, thanks very much for those questions, and I'd also like to thank our panelists, Katrina, Benjamin, and Julian.